Video number 48 in the playlist for 3D Experience CATIA Generative Shape Design application. The icon that I'd like to discuss with you is something called 3D Curve Offset. And I have some comments to make, as you see. First of all, if you generative shape design uh, and the wireframe tab is selected, there is a pull-up menu here, which is the 3D Curve Offset. Now the dialog box that is resulted is over there, and this is the definition, or this is a summary or brief statement on what this thing is. It said you can create 3D curve offset from a reference curve. Not very informative. Now, when you uh, check on Google, it says, well, although you may get the impression that 3D curve offset is similar to translation, it is not, because translation of a curve keeps the shape of the curve the same as a rigid movement. But the 3D curve offset will actually change the shape of the curve depending on the pulling direction that's selected. So there is a difference between two, although in some situations you may get the impression that they look the same. So the 3D curve offset command is more complex, specialized function for creating a parallel-like curve. What does that parallel-like means? Often used in surface design. And over here it says it's common in modeling complex surfaces or styling. That's the thing. A lot of this styling and generating complex surfaces is more like art as opposed to science. There's a lot of math in it, but the math is not presented in the theory manual. Really, you need to have that to see what's going on behind the screen. Now, here is a summary of the differences between the two. May change the shape to maintain offset distance and smoothness, and creates a new curve parallel to the original curve, whatever that parallel mean in a specified direction. Right? This is a very vague statement. What does that mean? So this playlist generally follows the work of the YouTuber here, but for this particular tutorial, video number 48, uh, this one is a lot better. And last few minutes of it, it says, hey, this is very complicated. You may want to experiment with it. And the main reason is that we are not being told what's going on uh, behind the screen, and the documentation is not available to the best of my knowledge. So in order to do that, I'm going to do some very simple examples, and not actually experimenting with all the features that you may find in there. But anyway, let's go ahead here. And what I'm going to do first is create uh, I want to create a plane out here, which is slightly tilted about the Z direction. And in order to do that, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to create a point out there. So wireframe point, and I'm going to use coordinates x is, let's say, x is minus 100 millimeter, y is 100 millimeter, and z is also 100 millimeter. So there's a point up there. And why I did that, because I can create an axis system with origin right there. Notice that I now have planes of this coordinate system, yz, xz, and xy, but I'm going to rotate this thing by about 45 degrees. So I'm going to rotate Euler angle, rotates about the z by 45 degrees, maybe 30 degrees, okay. Notice that it did rotate. Okay, good. So I have a plane here. On that plane, I will sketch. a circle. The radius of it doesn't matter, something like that, and exit. So I have a curve in space sitting in the YZ plane of this axis system, which is tilted with respect to the global by 30 degrees. Now we're going to go and do a 3D curve offset. The curve is that circle. The pulling direction, I'm going to choose this YZ plane. See that, the YZ plane here? Pulling direction. Now I can move it this way because the arrow points that way. Boy, I can drag this and move it or put a number there. It doesn't matter. I can grab this thing and move it like that. Okay? Good. This looks like kind of translation. Or I can select, instead of the YZ plane of this, the YZ plane of my global system. I can still do that. But this is not a circle anymore. You can actually see what happened. The other one, when I selected YZ plane of this, okay, and we drag this is all in that circle, in that plane. But if I choose pulling direction this YZ plane, yeah, it moves, but it moves in 3 dimensions. Look at that. Okay? And the other thing is that I can flip the direction and it's going to give me an error message because it says I can't do that. Fine. Cancel. So now let me go and draw a different curve. So on the XY plane of the global system, not XY, on the, what is that? YZ plane of the global system, global plane, I will sketch. I'll sketch a spline. It really doesn't matter, but spline, something like this. Exit. Okay, we already tried the circle, and now we're going to do 3D curve offset. For the curve, I select this. For the pulling direction, I select the, for example, XY plane of the global system. And what that means is that I can actually move this thing. You see that? In the direction parallel to the XY plane. Okay, right there, you can see this. Now, what if I selected, this is fine, no problem. Let's do another one. Offset, same curve. This time I'm going to do it in, for the pulling direction, I use the exit plane. And now I'll see where we can pull it. It won't do it, okay? So cancel, try it again, try something else. For example, I select the, let me see that for the curve, this. For the pulling direction, I will use that plane. Okay. And there we are. At some point it goes nuts. Let's pull it up. Cancel. Try it again. This and that. And say okay. And let me try changing the corner here to maybe 20. Kind of hard to see. Maybe 50, 60, maybe 80. You see that? It actually smoothed it out. Let me control that. Which one was that? That was the last one that I did, right here. Let me make it, let me zoom in. Let me zoom in. 50. And watch it. See, smooth it out. Let me change the tension. It won't work. Okay, so put it back to, I believe it was 0.5. Yeah. So the moral of the story is that you can do all kinds of crazy things, and it looks like a translation, but the shape will change. At some point, it may go crazy, and really, these two comments are critical. For simple things, you can make it work. You can do things. But the bottom line is that this is more of it's an art as opposed to science. It is science, but in order to know what's happening behind the science, you need this. And I'm not sure if it's available. Okay, that's pretty much it.